All right, today we're going to be here showing you the step-by-step process of how to build or assemble your dice tray from Sandbox Gaming. We first here have laid out the pieces of the outside box of your dice tray. We have your top and your floor piece. We have our two side walls, and we have the back wall here of this outside box. And this will be where we begin our assembly. We also do recommend that when you are putting together any of our products that you will be using wood glue. For purposes of this video here today, I will not be using it just for timing and to keep things moving along quickly on this video. But as we are using glue, when you do want to put glue on items, you will want to go ahead and put it inside each of these different valleys on these pieces of wood here. And then that way, when you insert it into their appropriate piece, it will then be able to attach to it nicely there. So with that, we'll begin with the assembly of the outside box. This one's not too bad. We'll begin here by taking our two side walls and the back wall. And we will want to take our back wall and these notches here on the sides here of these walls. You'll want to then take this piece and assemble it in as such. Now again, if you're using glue, a little bit of glue there in each of those corners before you put it in there will allow it to just grab and hold there nice. We'll then take our other side wall on the other side here, and again, fit it in as such. So there we have the start of the outside box. We will then take our floor piece from the outside box, and now we will begin slotting these into their appropriate areas. Once everything is lined up, we can begin applying that pressure to push everything in. Once again, using glue here is recommended just to help with the longevity and durability of the items. All right, so we now have the walls onto the floor of the outside box. Last step now is to take the top with the beautiful etching on it and go ahead and line it up, and then simply again push the item down onto it. Again, feel free to use glue, putting glue inside each of these little valleys as you go, just a little bit in there. You can even put a little glue, take a Q-tip and kind of smear it around in there so it's a nice level amount across all of them. But then feel free to now take the top piece, lining it up, and begin inserting it into the notches, pushing around. You probably hear those groans and creaks. Again, wood is a natural material. This will happen. You can put a decent amount of pressure on this as you're pushing it around. The first piece that we're going to put our velvet on here is going to be the floor piece. Now, one thing to be aware of on the floor piece here, you will see it has the word up printed on it on one of the sides. So make sure that that side is the side facing up when you do build this. So the first piece we're going to use here is the velvet for the floor. Now this velvet piece is a perfect square. So any direction you want to put on there, it will fit. So you don't need to worry about that. The velvet here, nice. We can just peel the backing off. There we go. With the back peeled off, we will now just go ahead and line it up inside of this floor piece, using all the cut holes as basically our guides here to make sure that everything is lined up. When you're satisfied with it, go ahead and push it down. And there's the first of our floor velvet pieces. We'll now go ahead and move on to the next floor piece here, which will be one of our other velvet pieces. You can always just verify it's the right size before you peel the backing off so you know it's the right one. When you know you have the right one, same steps, we'll go ahead and peel off the backing and we'll line it up. Again, use the cutout holes there to determine the edges of all the pieces. It makes this process go nice and smooth. So when we're happy with that, go ahead and stick it down. And there are the two pieces for the floor. So go ahead and set that aside. The next piece we're going to be adding velvet to is what we call our divider wall. Okay, so you want to make sure you have the correct divider wall. Divider wall will have the flat edge on one of the sides and then all the ridges on the bottom. The velvet piece for that is going to look like this. It's a bit bigger because it's going to wrap all the way up and over onto both sides of the divider wall. So go ahead and peel the backing off of that. And we'll go ahead and line this up. When we have it lined up, we can now go over to the other side. And there you go, you have your divider wall with the velvet now on both sides and across the top. After that, we'll move on to the inside front wall, which is going to be the piece with the singular hole on it. We'll be looking for the velvet piece that has the large circle on it. And that's going to be the piece for this one, as we see here. So we'll go ahead and take that off. And same with the others. Just go ahead and line it up on the edges. Getting it around to where you need. And push it on, and there it is. You can put it on either side. Doesn't matter, the side is fully reversible if you need, so there is that one. We're now going to grab our two side walls, and we're going to begin applying the velvet to our two side walls. Now for this, we will have two long skinny pieces of velvet and then two shorter pieces to go on the front like so. Okay, so once you know you have the right pieces, we can begin applying. Now for these sidewall pieces, once I get it on here, I'll show you in a bit more detail. For these sidewalls, you really want to use the two cutouts here as your guides for it to go left and right. You'll notice there is a little bit of wood still peeking off on both sides, top and bottom here. That's just for spacing purposes to allow the other velvet, when it does butt up against it, to join together nicely and not be cramped in there with, you know, full velvet going to the edges. When it's all built, you won't see that wood because the velvet will connect with the other pieces of velvet, so you'll be good on that. So when you are applying the velvet here to these sidewalls, do your best to just equally space it, you know, in the up and down way for what we were just talking about. There we go. So velvet on one piece. When I was mentioning the equal parts up and down, I'm talking about this part to that part there, up, down. So just equal pieces of wood showing on both sides of that. All right, so now we have the velvet here on our two side pieces. Let's go ahead and push those out of the way. We're now going to grab the back wall piece. And again, the back wall piece has the ridges on the top and the bottom. And you'll be looking for the singular piece like this for the back wall of velvet, which will fill in right across like that. And that should be there for our velvet. All right, now that we have all of our velvet applied to each of the individual pieces here of the dice tray, it's now time to begin the assembly process of the dice tray itself. Now, we always do recommend whenever you are assembling our products that wood glue would be recommended when you are building it. For purposes of our example here today, we're not going to be using wood glue just for time purposes. But we would recommend using glue on any product you build, and I'll point out some good tips and tricks with that glue, how to use it as I'm building it so that you are aware of where to put it on the pieces as you go. So what we're going to be doing here first as part of the main dice tray is we'll be taking all of the side and front wall and divider pieces, and we'll be assembling this first. So we'll begin by taking one of our side wall pieces, which will be the side wall here. It has these two velvets, the extra notch there. And we will go ahead now and we will take our back wall piece and we will slot it into the corresponding hole right here. Just like that, so that all this velvet begins to build on the inside. We will then now take our divider wall, and again, divider wall has the velvet on both sides and the top, and that will be notched here into this one right in the middle. So it begins to look like so. We will now take our inside front wall, okay, that has the hole in it, and you want the velvet again to be facing the inside of the tray. So that will then notch into this hole right here. And then we will lastly take the other side wall and now fit it onto the opposite side. All right, so with that, we do have the initial insides, I said the outer walls of the dice tray now put together. This is a point where if you are to use glue when you're putting these in, please be mindful that you're not getting too much glue on there, as it will spill over onto the velvet, and that could cause some damage to your velvet. So if you are gonna put glue on it when you're inserting these pieces, just use little dabs of it on the edges of it when you're inserting each piece to lock it in there. But now that we have this assembled, we can leave that there, and we will now take our axle piece, which is this metal pin looking item, and you will now insert this from the inside of this wall here and push it through that opening like that. Okay, so you may need to put a little pressure on it when you're popping it through. It should slot in there nicely just like that. You can even put it in there before you put this wall on if you'd like to do that, whatever works for you. So we should make sure we get that on there. After we have that on there now, we will take the first of our spacer wheels and we will put that first spacer wheel on it like so. The next step now is we'll continue adding pieces onto this axle, and we will begin by adding the lock piece onto the axle from here. Push it on now, making sure that these ridges here, where you'll be rolling it, these ridges will be the top portion as you're rolling it over like this. And you can also mark the top by the side of the divider here that has the velvet on it. Okay, so that's gonna be our wheel. And then we'll take the next spacer and that will go on it, oops, like so. The final step now of the innards here of this dice tray is to now take the outside front wall and we will be putting it over everything. Now, it's important that as we're putting it over, this second of these two holes will be on the side here that will allow you to see the images of the etched lock through it as we're doing that. So go ahead and begin fitting that on like so. And that will have now the dice tray portion of this built, and as you can see, as I rotate this, I can see the images of the lock through that hole there. Hopefully that comes through on the camera. All right, so now that we have that in place, we'll take the floor piece of our dice tray, and it is now time to insert what we just built here into the floor of the dice tray itself. Now, this does take a little bit of working, a little bit of wiggling as you're going through, pushing it into each of the corresponding slots. Whichever method you find works for you is good. Just make sure you are taking your time to go around and push each notch into its corresponding hole as you're moving through it, and you'll be able to fit it in there quite nicely. So this would be another good point if you'd like to add some glue. When you are adding glue to anything, you'll want to put it into any of these ridges where it kind of dips in like that. Just put a little bit of glue there in one of those notches there. So I guess for this to be down here. And then as you push it in there, it'll allow that glue to kind of hold it, lock it in place. Again, being mindful, not adding too much glue to spill over onto the velvet. So we will just begin working our way around the floor here of the dice tray, lining up all these notches as we're pushing items into it. You can go ahead and flip it over, make sure everything's lined up. This will require a decent amount of pressure as you're pushing things in. Around, put it on a flat surface and kind of push down on it. Those creaks and groans, that's just natural with wood, as it is a natural material. So we keep going around, getting everything in nice and flush. And once you get everything pushed in there, we now have almost completed the tray portion of our dice tray. Again, we'll double check here, make sure that our lock wheel has fit in there how it's supposed to fit in there, allowing us to still rotate it and see the images through this hole. The final step now for the inside portion of our dice tray will be to now take the top portion of it and now, same concept, fit it on here. This is the piece where we do need to be quite careful as we are working around it. As we are putting this on here, we're wanting to make sure that we are applying the amount of pressure we need to get it onto the holes, but also be mindful that we're kind of working our way, putting pressure around and working it down as we go to avoid snapping it or breaking into the piece here. So let's go ahead and line it up and begin that process of just kind of slowly applying pressure around it as we go, getting everything into where it belongs. Again, I'm sure you can hear those creaks and groans as I'm pushing on there. Again, that's just part of the process here, and it will hold on nicely for us. And there we go. With all that now, I have the inside of the dice tray fully assembled, ready for us to roll dice. All right, now that you have your assembled outside box and tray, you are now able to take your dice with you, roll them as you go, right here into the main box of the tray. When you're all ready to go, transport your dice with you. They fit nicely up here into this front section, into your tray. Go ahead and lock it up, and now you can take your dice with you. When it's ready time to play, go ahead and unlock the box. Use the hole here on the back to push the tray out, and you're ready to game.